fortunate to be in the right place at the right time on this project. I got involved in the first Earth Day back in 1970 as a freshman college student, and we recycled a few bottles and cans, and that's about what happened. And, you know, there were other attempts through the years. During the energy crisis in the mid-70s, we launched another project to improve the efficiency of home insulation and reduce fuel consumption. And the hostage crisis ended, and oil prices came down, and that opportunity closed out. I think we're at a point in our history where we really are looking at fundamental changes in the way we look at things. People are realizing the planet is finite, that we have a responsibility to maintain it for future generations, and the amount of support that has come our way from everyone from the Boy Scouts, which would seem like illogical, to organizations like the Four Seasons, which was rather out of the blue. There's just a tremendous amount of interest in this. And it's not just monetary support. We've got those organizations actually coming out there and physically helping us in the field. And although they picked some beautiful days to shoot that video, there's a lot of days working out there is not a really joyful thing to do. You're cold, you're wet, and you can't wait for the day to end. So for people to give their time in situations like that's great. In fact, one of the things they didn't mention about the Boy Scouts is the Punahou troop was out there for a week, and they wanted to do an in-service project. Well, there was an old water catchment that had been abandoned since the 1930s, and we wanted to rehabilitate that catchment. So we had these Boy Scouts down there, waist deep in muck, shoveling it into 5-gallon buckets and hauling it out. And along with all the muck, there were 3 dead cow carcasses and every other animal thing. And they were pretty good sports through all of it. So they got more of an experience out of it than they intended when you were just coming up to plant a couple of trees. So when we started this 3 years ago, we were looking at a project where we thought, well, if we can plant 10,000 trees, that would be great. Our first year we planted 20,000 trees. The second year we were able to plant 40,000 trees, and just this last week we completed the planting of 80,000 trees. So we've been able to double each year. We've been able to double each year, and we're at a point now where not only is our survival assured, but we seem to have achieved kind of a critical mass where we're getting the support of organizations like Merry Monarch and the Nature Conservancy, and a variety of groups that bring a lot of value added to this. The Nature Conservancy has been a tremendous partner. Their particular problem, as they pointed it out, is they could always find donors to provide money for conservation easements or to acquire land for preservation or donate land for preservation, but they're never able to find a way to fence this land, remove invasive species, and replant the forests that were there. Well, working with them, we've been able to develop land and management partnerships that allow us to accomplish all of that. And we're very pleased also that this year we're able to expand into the replanting of a lot of other native species. The koa tree in that environment is really the backbone of the native forest. Once that tree is established, we're able to go back in and put in other trees and understory plants that were part of that forest as well, such as sandalwood is probably the most notable one, which we're planting this year, along with a lot of the shrubs like Kohoko Alau and Ali'i and Kala, the Hawaiian raspberry. And we're also planting some of the plants like the Kukainene that are forage plants for native Hawaiian birds, such as the nene. And it's kind of an honor to be a part of something that grew much bigger than I expected it to be. And I would like to invite any of you to, if you have an opportunity to get to the Big Island, to contact our office and take a chance to come up and see the place. Because, you know, the pictures are one thing, and hearing about it's another, but the first time I stood out there and looking at the land and going, oh my gosh, this is 18 square miles. How am I going to do this? You know, it sort of changes your perspective on Hawaii. You know, you think of the little strip that we call home right around the edge of the beach, but once you go upslope, there's a whole other world up there. I'd like to thank you all again for the opportunity to come here. Any questions, I'd be happy to help you in any way I can.
Thank you. At what age is it rational to harvest koa?
Well, you know, there's been a tremendous debate about that over the years, and when they first told us about the koa trees that were being harvested and winding up in the furniture milling cycle, people were looking at trees that they were guessing were 60 years old. It's always been hard to tell because koa doesn't lay down growth rings like a traditional deciduous mainland tree. But there's some plantation stands of koa that are on the same property we're on that date back to about 25 years. And the wood quality in those has been excellent. The way our plantations are run, the trees are planted at fairly high density to ensure good growth form, and we start thinning around year 8 and progressively select back for the best quality trees. The primary full hardwood koa crop is in the 20 to 25 year range, but we have had some milling done of some young trees that were taken out in these thinning programs that were only 8 years old and have gotten tremendously great feedback from both furniture workers and craftsmen. In fact, Martin MacArthur, we saw Michael Tam on video, they use koa throughout their pieces. So the interior carcasses of cabinets are koa also. And his attitude is, why are we wasting appearance grade koa on the interiors of cabinets? We can build the cabinets with perfectly structurally fine koa wood without wasting the appearance grade wood that can be put on the surfaces of those cabinets. So the answer to that is that the best time to harvest it from an ecological point of view is as it's needed for the health of the forest. We are thinning back to improve the quality of the remaining trees and always improving the genetic stock. From the point of view of the wood quality, we're finding that young koa has got as big an audience as some of the older growth koa. And in fact, you'll see a lot of furniture pieces where you see both hardwood and sapwood in the same piece, and it adds a lot of character to it. So I think there's a market to be developed for these younger woods that have been overlooked over the years just because they weren't available.
Great presentation. It just so happens that one of my neighbors back in the early 80s helped develop the koa containers for survival of koa. He did his doctorate degree on it.
Wow.
He got a doctorate in dirt, which is honorable, I think. My question is, stems from that. I just wonder, of the many thousands of trees that are planted, what percentage survive?
Oh, that's actually, what we do is, in the first year we were planting them, we seem to run right around 80 to 85% immediate survival. And the second year we go back into those same fields and we replant any trees that failed to thrive in the first year with trees we've held in larger containers, so they're of comparable size to the trees that are in the field. And that builds us back up to about 100% stocking right off of the bat. And we figure over the first 8 years, we're looking at a survival rate somewhere around 85% as being ideal, because around year 8, you thin back 35 to 45% of the trees anyway.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. I live up in New Lano, and a lot of the dead trees you see up in the valley are old koas that have, they died off. I understand there's a parasite or something that's affecting them. How are you dealing with that?
There's a disease they call koa wilt, which is caused by a fungus, Fusarium. And as it turns out, it takes 3 ingredients for that to be a problem. One is the pest, which is the Fusarium, the host, which is the koa, and the environment. And Fusarium is primarily a problem at lower elevations. And above 3,000 feet, it's seldom a problem. So the old adage is planting koa above 3,000 feet is an investment. planting it below 3,000 feet is an experiment. So, what they figure may have happened over time is with koa harvesting, well, first of all, koa is considered to be very microclimate specified. In other words, it's evolved in the environment it's in, and if you take seeds from one area and generate those trees and plant them in another area, they often don't thrive. So by harvesting low elevation koa, uniquely in the early stages, because it was easy to transport, they wound up wiping out a lot of the genetics in these trees that were adapted to those lower elevations. So there's an active move afoot to try to see if some of those genes for low altitude survival still exist in high altitude trees. And we've been working with a couple of groups to, we've got about 250 mother trees that we've identified as being genetically superior. And we're testing those species for fusarium resistance at low altitude.
And if anybody has other questions, please do come up afterwards. Daryl has agreed to stay for a few minutes.